So we'll first quickly start off with what we discussed the last webinar. The things which we discussed in the previous webinar, which is very important, and I'm sure you must have seen the charts for Nifty, that we first told you that whenever there are sudden pauses in the markets which come by, sudden knee-jerk price action which come by, okay, that's potentially a time where you have to be a bit, I would say, a bit backdated with your analysis and your stock picking, because what happens is in the first phase when the market dips, okay, we feel that अरे market में शायद panic आएगा. The second phase when the markets rally, हमको confidence extra आ जाता है. So if our confidence was say 100% in the previous trend, gets dampened to say 80% after the correction, the confidence in the next rally jumps to 110, 120%. So if you remember in our July webinar, we told you that whenever you start to see rumblers at play, okay, whenever you start to see rumblers at play, those zones are actually a point where you take a back seat. वहां पे आपको कैश रेस करना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है पोर्टफोलियोज में. Correct? I hope you remember this, that I told you that whenever you see those rumblers at play, if you can go back to my previous webinars, or if you have the recordings for the previous webinar, which we've already given it to you guys, then you can just look at the points where the markets got into a zone of volatility. And the moment the markets got into a zone of volatility, even though we dipped first, we made a new high relatively, but then again, we are losing steam. So rumblers ka matlab hota hai, there is a turn ahead. The turn could be short term, the turn could be medium term, depends on each market conditions. The more the rumblers at play, market rumblers at play, the more could be the damage in the market. Okay, I think I gave an example of 2007. In 2007, I think in the prior month, the last 4 months, that is August towards December 2007, there were I think 4 or 5 zones जब market बहुत ज़्यादा volatile था, and too many rumblers at play. If you see the charts for Nifty, and post at start of 2008, we saw and we all know what happened. Same happened in 2018, 19, and so on so forth. So the more the rumblers, the more is the possibility that the markets are preparing or priming you for a sharper correction. Okay, right now, good part is right now that so far there are not too many rumblers at play. है ना? तो ये पॉजिटिव पार्ट है मार्केट्स के लिए सो फार, दैट देयर नॉट टू मेनी रम्बलर्स. छोटा सा एक जोन था रम्बलर का, वो बैंक निफ्टी में आपको शायद क्लियरली दिखेगा. वी ऑलरेडी रिट्रेस सम 2000 पॉइंट्स, 2200 पॉइंट्स अप्रोक्सीमेटली फॉर बैंक निफ्टी आफ्टर दैट रम्बलर, and some 300, 500 points or 400 points on the Nifty so far. But the second observation which we discussed, and so I'll just run through the observation very quickly again today for the benefit of people who are joining fresh. If you've already seen, if you're wanting to see this in detail, we've already covered this in our YouTube. So you can just log on to our YouTube at KB Bothra and you can see the full video which we had done on the 6th of July on the Fibonacci time analysis. But I'll just run through this before we start off with our series of today's topic of should you buy this dip. Okay, so very quickly, we discussed what was the Fibonacci series. A simple series where you start off with 0 and 1, they become the starting point of every analysis on the Fibonacci series, and then you keep on adding the previous number so that you get the next number. So you add 0 plus 1, you get the next number 1. Then you add 1 plus 1, the previous two numbers, you get 2. You add 2 plus 1, 3, so on so forth. Okay, that's a Fibonacci series, very widely available, very well known for all of you guys. And Fibonacci, as you all know, is a part of our day-to-day cycle in nature. So I don't know if you know this, but the palm of your hand, the height of your body, the waves on the oceans, and so on and so forth, you can find this. You can do a Google search, and nowadays you can do a Chat GPT search, but you can find tremendous amount of details on Fibonacci sequence and series. So you can see this in our day-to-day lives as well, that Fibonacci series impacts our thought as well as our structure as well. So we discussed Fibonacci series and sequence on the Nifty 50, and I mentioned that the Fibonacci sequence which we spotted on the Nifty 50 is playing out to perfection. Is playing out to perfection on the index since the last 8 observations. 8 observations. So it starts from 0 towards 13. Now for every observation, there is a starting point. And we all know, and I think we all agreed upon that the starting point of this bull market as such is from the COVID lows, because that was the first time where the markets was decimated first, and then a new structure was built upon. So again, keeping that starting point of COVID, we assume that the first rally which starts off, because March 2020 was the first month where the markets started to form a bottom. April is where there was slight recovery which started off into the index. So again, we start off with 0, 1. What do we do? You add the number and add the number to the previous month to get the next month. So we started off with 0 as March 2020. 1 was April 2020. So which means you add 0 plus 1, you get next number 1. You add 1 to April 2020, which you get as May 2020. So what you see in May 2020, as you can see, the Nifty made a high of 9,889. And then in the next subsequent 3 weeks, the index fell towards 8,800. So at that time, the correction was somewhere around 800 to 900 points on the Nifty, which means mota mota 7% to 8% fall on the index on May 2020. So here we are trying to use Fibonacci sequence to find the tops, and from the tops, what could be the maximum retracement the index can do. The next, so you add, so the next number is 1 plus 1, 2. You add 2 to the month of May. What you get is June. So May and June, June or July 2020, you saw the index retracing from 10,328 towards 9,544. Now this meant that the index again retraced by some 700 points. So 700 points, mota mota, is around 7%, 6% to 7% on the index, which again happened in June 2020. The next number is 2 plus 1, 3. You add 3 to June 2020. What do you get? July, August, September. So September becomes your third month. You add, you see the month of September 2020, the Nifty corrected from 11,794. In the next 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, the index fell to 10,790. Okay. Now you add 3 plus 2, the previous number, which is 5. So from September, you add 5, you get Feb 2021. Again, Feb 2021 May, the index made a high, which was 15,431. Next 4 weeks, 4-5 weeks, the index fell down to 14. So लगभग 1200 point, 1100 point का correction. Again, in terms of percentage, 6% to 7% correction max was seen in 2021 Feb. Very quickly, we move on to the next number, which is 8. So 5 plus 3, we add the previous two numbers, 8. Add the month of 8 towards Feb 2021, you get October 2021. Again, October 2021, surprisingly, the Nifty forms a top at 18,600 mota mota and falls down to 16,400. Again, but this time the correction was a bit extended. So it was not just a 3 week or a 4 week correction. This extended to max 2 months of correction. Then you add the number 13, which is 8 plus 5. You add that to the previous number of October 2021. You get November 2022. And this was the point where the index saw an extended period of correction, which means November 2002 May, index formed a high of 18,728. We corrected towards 16,828. Again, a correction of 8 to 9% at least. What was the next number we discussed then? 21. The next number was 13 plus 8, which is 21. And so on the previous webinar, when we calculated this, the date was coming to August 2024. So which means from our previous observation, the calculation is going almost on an exact basis. Now the point comes. Okay, now the first question which I'm sure rises in your mind is, will this be a 2 week, 3 week correction? Can the index fall by 4%, 5%, 6%? Kitna hoga average, right? And if in the next 4 weeks, if we fall, say by 3 to 4%, okay, on an average, should you buy this dip or should you not? Right or wrong? That's the first set of questions which will arise. Yes, Nikhil Rusan, you can extrapolate this to even 34 months, which means that the next big correction could probably 3 years from now, approximately 3 years from now. Okay, 34 months, which is. So you can calculate that also for the next. And don't worry, just prior to that, I will ensure that I will do a webinar. So you can maybe join that time also. Yes, Saurabh Relan, this was unbelievable. Hi Saurabh, good to see you. This is unbelievable. And not many people, in fact, none of the people I would say could actually even do this study of Fibonacci time analysis on the Nifty. In fact, I don't know if you know this, but in 2006, 14 or 15, I also came out with a major time cycle analysis on Nifty. I don't know if you guys know this, and this was from the start of the Nifty in 96, 97. Okay, where we started off on the index from that time, 97 or somewhat for the index. From that time, मैंने Fibonacci analysis किया हुआ है time cycles पे on the index. So which, and that tells you the biggest of the biggest cycles. And 2014, may I remember when I did this analysis, I wrote an article. That article was actually printed across in Dalal Street in Economic Times at that time, and I think leading newspapers, the digital newspapers, newsletters. I did a lot of seminars at that time because I was associated with the broking firm at that time, and we prepared all our clients for the upcoming bull market that time. So we did this analysis in 2014, and we told the exact time where the markets will bottom out in terms of years, and from that year how much would be the extent of a bull market in terms of number of years, a major bull market that is. So right now what we are discussing is that within the framework of a major bull market, which we are already going through, how this could potentially be a corrective wave, right? So everyone who's fearing कि मैं मेरा portfolio सारा बेच दूं और 5% नीचे ले लूं, you should not try to be adventurous over here, but yes, you should at least try to remove the so-called, if I can use that word, kachra from your portfolio and ensure that you start sticking to quality. Okay. In the end of the webinar, the last few slides of the webinar, I've also mentioned few sectors which you believe will be defensives, but may actually not play out as defensives in this leg of potential correction for the index, which I believe should last for 2-3 weeks. So we'll decipher all of that. Okay. Rajeshri says incredible. Renu says it's amazing. Thank you so much. Keep doing webinar in between 34 months also. Yes, I will. Okay. Do you see time cycles on indices and stocks? Yes, I do. On stocks as well, Ashish Agarwal. But apparently, my belief is that आप अगर एक major trend ले लो ना index पे और उसके बाद आप stocks का analysis करो ना, तो बहुत easy हो जाता है analysis करना, because once you know that where the bigger trend is for the index, then finding the stocks which fits into the same time cycle becomes easier. But there is a lot of rigorous analysis which you have to go. So इतना simple नहीं होता है कि आपने बस मतलब 011 डाल दिया और आपको charts आ जाएगा. There is a lot of back testing, as I said, which we do to try and ensure that which stocks move in sync with the index when the cycle is at play. Okay, cool. So, okay, we have a lot of this thing. Unbelievable, says Tarun Chaturvedi. Fabulous, Satyan Agarwal. Can we get this videos recording? I think you can get this videos recording maybe by tomorrow or day after, because today and tomorrow I have not asked my team to work, but today I have forced them to work in the morning, and that's why they could do all this at the back end. But hopefully by Monday, I think you can probably get this thing on your on my YouTube channel, so you can probably watch the entire video there. Manan Savla says, brilliant. I missed 15 minutes. Don't worry. You can probably see it on YouTube. Sunil Kumar says, please tell the sectors. Yes, wait for the last slide. Last couple of slides, I have mentioned the sectors as well. Okay. So this is where we left off in the previous webinar. But the question is, correction to aa raha hai na? Global markets mein there is some sort of fear which has started off. So we'll first discuss what's happening across the global market, and then we'll try to decipher that whether our markets are resilient, strong, and whether you should buy this dip or not. Okay, we'll discuss both the scenarios, but we'll start off with the global markets first. High level of data analysis, next level of AI. No, this is not AI. This is pure hardcore analysis. And I would say thanks to my team who does all this backtesting regularly. Like I have trained them and hardcore trained them to try and do all these backtesting and be very, very strong with the set of analysis which we do. So that's why I said it's a game of probabilities. It's not a game of certainties. Even if we get 8 out of 10 right, we are super duper happy with our observations and with our analysis. Okay. So yeah, so what is the next set of analysis? The next set of analysis starts of what happened globally yesterday. I'm sure all of you guys would have seen and would have received the messages on your WhatsApp of what happened yesterday on the global markets. And I'm sure you guys remember or have seen what happened to the stocks as well. For the first time, there were jitters which started off in stocks, and we are talking of those large cap dominated stocks, whether it was Intel, whether it was Amazon, whether it was Nvidia, and so on and so forth. So many large cap stocks in the US markets started to tumble. Okay, they started to tumble. Now there is, so again, when there is a scenario like this playing out, when the markets are anticipating, they don't know what is going to happen, whether US elections में क्या होगा, कौन जीतेगा, कौन हारेगा, whether US will go into recession, whether there is a rate cut which is impending in September, will that happen or will that not happen? All of that. When there are too many subjective analysis or subjective data points which are there, we typically try to put this all into an objective method. And what is the best method to try and be objective in these scenarios, and especially after what happened yesterday, is to look at the first and the foremost indicator of fear in the market. Do you know what is the foremost indicator of fear in the market? If there is fear in the US market specifically. So we are discussing right now the US markets or the global markets. So what is that first or the prime indicator of fear? Is it stocks? Is it the Dow? Is it the Nasdaq? Is it the S&P? Or is it an index which is an gauge which is a gauge of the fear or sentiment in the US markets or for the US markets? And it's a sentiment for, and it's an indicator which is used for our markets also. Okay, for India's index, that is. No, it's not jobs data. Come on. Jobs data and everything is a data point, but it impacts the fear thread of a market. Many of you guys are already right. Srinivas, Ravi, Nirmal, Ashish, Savan, Deepak, fantastic. Sabyasachi, Bhavin, yes, and that is CBOE VIX. So yesterday the CBOE VIX jumped by 25%. I know percentage को percentage में calculate करना या बोलना थोड़ा सा weird हो जाता है. But just to put it into perspective, I think we jumped from 16 or 17 on the CBOE VIX and we closed about 23 plus for the CBOE VIX. So there was a 25% plus jump for CBOE VIX, which happened yesterday. Correct? Now, what we've done is scenario testing or testing. And these are very rigorous testings which we've done for the last, do you know when was the VIX index which was launched? So the index is available since the last 35 years. Yeah, 35, 36 years, 34, 35 years broadly. So we did a rigorous testing for CBOE VIX on various scenario testings for the last 30, 35 years. And based on our analysis, we we realize that there are two important observations which are relevant for VIX in today's market. One, what happens when CBOE VIX crosses 25 or 26 level? 25 level and 26 level is more the same, but what happens when CBOE VIX crosses the zone of 25, which apparently is a zone where the market starts to get into a panic zone, or I would not say a panic. Panic would be an extreme word, but the start of a panic zone or a fear zone. Fear is a better word. Okay. And the second part is what happens when VIX suddenly jumps by 25% on a single day. And then what is the analysis for that? Okay. The observations are a howler if you are a short-term investor, if you're a short-term trader. Okay. Then this is US observations, guys. US market observations. So that's why I said we'll start off with the global market and then we'll come to our market, the Nifty and the Bank Nifty observations. Yeah, Yash, that was for India VIX. This is for CBOE VIX. Okay. So what happens when VIX crosses 25? So we did a set of observations. Whenever VIX crosses 25, what happens in 5 days, which is 1 week? What happens in 20 days, which is approximately 1 month? What happens in 3 months and 6 months? Okay. So we did a scenario testing of what happens when VIX crosses the CBOE VIX, that is, crosses the level of 25, and what are the returns for the index. Why is this important? Because you should always know what the global undercurrent is going right now. Okay. Because once you know that global undercurrent could reach to maybe this kind of a worse point, you know that maybe just before the worst starts to happen, you start looking at investing opportunities. Correct? That's the idea which we are discussing. So we are trying to use the ongoing global correction or the sudden global correction and trying to analyze that what could be a point where the CBOE VIX or this data tells us that the markets can start to bottom out. Say in the next 5 days, in the next 20 days, or in the next 3 months, and so on and so forth. Okay. So 90% of the time, after the VIX crosses 25, 90% of the time, so right now we are at 23 and a half approximately. So 90% of the times the readings are S&P was down on an average, and it was down by a margin of another 3%, which means assuming, so right now we are at 23 and a half approximately, assuming Monday or Tuesday assuming if there is one more leg of correction which comes into the US market, okay, and the VIX jumps to 25 plus and closes about 25, which means the data says 90% of the time, in fact it is 95% to be precise, but 90% of the times the near-term trend for the S&P, Dow, and Nasdaq, of course, all of them combined, is immediate after a closing of 25 on the CBOE VIX. In the next 5 days, we expect average 3% correction. Okay, maximum मेरे ख्याल से शायद 5% corrections गया. These are the recent 20 observations which we have seen for CBOE VIX. Okay, 90% of the reading says we will still continue with negative trend on S&P, and out of those 90, the average is 3% correction further. Okay, so it's not as if that the world is ending and that you have to panic and sell off everything. At least the data doesn't suggest that so far. The next point is what happens in the next 20 days, which means in the next 1 month, approximately 20 working days, 21, 22 working days. So approximately in 1 month, what happens to the index, the S&P? Now what happens is 50% of the reading says market starts to recover, which means assuming Monday or Tuesday को अगर हम break करते हैं, which means by the end of the month, 50% of the readings says that after an rather a 1 week correction, the market starts to recover and we at least come back towards break even. In many times, we have also given positive returns on the index. I hope you are getting the point over here. Okay. First 5 days, if CBOE VIX crosses 25, 90 to 95% of the observation says the index falls by another 3% further. The next 20 days, which means the next 3 to 4 weeks, the index after the first sell-off gets into recovery. Do you know what happens in the next 60 days, which is approximately 3 months? 80% of the times, more than 80 in fact, the the S&P recovers all the losses which they've incurred, and in fact, the average gain is 4%. So I'll give you a very simple example. Assuming अगर S&P का value 100 होता है, assuming, so which means, and if the VIX crosses 25, which means in the next 5 days, we believe the S&P should come down to 97 post the observation for CBOE VIX crossing 25. After that, we believe that the S&P should stabilize or 50% chance of a recovery to at least come back into break even. But in the subsequent next 2 months after that, the index has a 80% probability to give 4% or higher returns. I hope you are getting the point over here, which means that this may not be a prolonged correction. Okay, which means that the next 3 weeks, if in case there is a 3% dip, 3 to 4% dip on an average for S&P, our markets will also start to bottom out. Okay, I hope you're getting the zing over here. This also coincides apparently with our first series of Fibonacci observations. If you remember that from the top, we dipped mota 6% to 7%. Right now, I think we've corrected 2% approximately. 1.9 or 2% is what we have corrected from the dip, from the top, 2% approximately, in fact, slightly more than 2%. So, which means we are looking at a maximum downside. Looking at the data, I mean, if things turn for the worst, don't blame me. If US goes into a recession or something XYZ that happens, as I said, we could be in that balance 10%, 20% where the observation may not work. But majority of the data says that in the next 2-3 weeks, the markets will offer one of the brilliant opportunities for all of us to start looking at investing opportunities as well as sector trends in the market. Correct? I hope you are all in sync with the observation so far. But the observation doesn't stop here. What we did is, so this is the net conclusion of the CBOE VIX observation, that the pain zones could actually be a good time to invest, and the short-term pain could be seen if the CBOE VIX crosses 25. So maybe by Monday, Tuesday, you would probably get the data very, very clearly if the CBOE VIX crosses level of 25. So I'm sure that this is the data point which you all have to keep in mind, rather than looking at whether there is a recession and whether there is this and that or a subjective data point. Okay, but the pain is potentially 3% on an average only. Most of the readings which we've seen, 3% on an average is what we've seen the pain for the index in the very near term. Okay, but so and now we discussed the first part, which was the data point, which is Fibonacci time analysis. We said that Fibonacci time analysis में August में correction आएगा, okay, and mota the correction should be 4% to 6% on an average, okay, for the index. Historically, the corrections are 3 to 4 weeks for the index max. But again, it's not a sharp fall which happens. पहला वीक गिरता है, 1-2 वीक रिकवर करता है, वापस से 1 वीक गिरता है, and then the terminal sell-off happens. This coinciding with CBOE VIX, if it happens, say in the next week, will both of them indicate that by the end or maybe the second half of the month of August, we would actually get very good zones where the Nifty would have corrected, the global markets would have corrected, and we would have been in the oversold territories. So that's why I said it's a very good time to reposition your portfolio where you may start to look at building or removing the maybe the mid caps and the small caps and the penny stocks if in case you have, and start looking at building your portfolio towards some sort of quality so that you can withstand the next 2 weeks of correction potentially, and then you start preparing for the upside again for the index. Now comes the next big observation, which is Nifty 50 seasonality. Now, do you guys know what happens in August? In the month of August, every year, this data on the Nifty 50, you know how much is the strike rate of this data point of the Nifty 50 on August? You will be amazed. The data on the Nifty 50 is 100% strike rate for the Nifty 50. 100%. Okay. 100% as a strike rate. So 80-90% से ज़्यादा. Since 2000, which is the last 20 years, 24 years, whatever, 23 years, this data has been absolutely bang on. So I'm sure you'll be ready to see the data. Correct? Are you ready? Yes or no? So far आपको समझ में आ गया कि what the next 3 weeks could be. So which means what you also should be doing as a advice from my side, try to reduce your trading, hardcore trading आप थोड़ा reduce कर दो in the next 2 weeks, okay, before the markets or the volatility settles down. Okay, ऐसा भी हम observation करेंगे जब VIX अगर इनके CBOE VIX ऊपर से घूम के वापस 25 ब्रेक करता है, तो we will do a separate webinar for that also, which will help us preempt that when the markets are likely to form a bottom. But the point is, for the next 2 weeks, just drop down your trading a bit, start looking at investing, or start looking at, or maybe try to filtering stocks when you're looking at investing. Joining the dots, you are Steve Jobs, master of market analysis. Thank you so much. Yes, yes, mind blowing. Okay, lovely. Very well explained. You instilled a lot of confidence. Thank you so much, Tarun. This data point is mind blowing. Again, it took us a lot of time to do this data point because we had to cull out all the observations and try to find sync observations for the index and for majority of the sectors. Okay, majority of the sectors. So what I'm trying to tell you today is only for 2 indices, but we've done this rigorous analysis for all sectors, all stocks, which are listed in the framework of Indian markets. Okay. Just prior to that, there's only one product which I wanted to discuss on, and this is a fantastic product. I believe that Super 5 is going to be one of the best value for money product from our stable. And I would urge everyone to subscribe to this Super 5 because this is a mind-blowing product, advisory product. सबसे बेस्ट पार्ट मालूम है क्या है? सबसे बड़ा क्वेश्चन होता है लोगों का कि हमको आप 5 स्टॉक दे दो जो आपको लगता है कि हमको मंथ के स्टार्ट में इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, और सेकंड सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है आप ऐसा पोर्टफोलियो बताओ जहां पे हम इक्वली एलोकेट कर ले, है ना, उन स्टॉक्स में. दिस प्रोडक्ट फिट्स यू परफेक्टली. यू डोंट हैव टू डू ट्रेडिंग like regular trading, and you are positioned with the best performing sectors every time. Do you know how much is the return, average return which you've generated? We started this product in Jan 2024. Okay, we saw Feb and March, major correction of mid caps in March. We saw month of June. We saw the budget correction. All of that has happened. Do you know how much is the average return, the monthly return which you've generated? No, it's not 2%. It's not 2.5%. But the average return which we are clocking is 6.5% gross return on the, and this is not trading. This is like we recommend stocks, we tell you a range to buy, and once you enter the stocks into a range, you will get an intimation once the stock hits the particular targets. Okay, or if it hits a stop loss for those stocks. The average returns, and right now I think we just have only two stocks which is open from entire kitty of the last 7 reports, which means 7 into 5, 35 stocks we've already recommended. We've closed 33 stocks in from our 35 stocks, and the average return is 6.5% month on month. Yes, there have been 4% returns also. There are times when 4 stocks have given returns, one has not given us return, which is absolutely fine. That's play of the, as I said, we are not in the game of certainties, we are in the game of probabilities. But this is one of the super products. I'll say Super 5 is that's why the name for the product. It's a fantastic product. We are coming out with a report in the next 2 days because we want to anticipate or try to preempt the bottom for the index. But the sector which we will be biased to is based on the observations which we have done for this seasonality for the index. So again, as I said, 6.4% is the monthly CAGR which we are hitting. And we hope to maintain this CAGR or this monthly return for months and months and for reports and reports to come by. So hopefully, if the markets are not very, very volatile and if there is no major bear market which hits us and the globe, we should be trying to maintain this average run rate. So that's why I'm saying it's a super value for money, and the monthly subscription rate is like nothing for this. Okay, and the yearly is paltry. So I think we have a current offer which is 30,000 for entire year, which you can subscribe to 12 reports for Super 5. So that's why I'm saying one of the super products which I strongly believe in the next 1-2 years you will start to hear a lot. And from Monday onwards, we are increasing the prices also for this report. So that's why today and tomorrow is the only day where we are running this offer for all of you guys. If you're looking to subscribe to Super 5, best time, best product, and value for money. That's the best part. Now we come to the seasonality point. Okay. Now just read this data carefully. See to this data very, very carefully. What is this data telling you? Guys, what is this data telling you? 100% is the strike rate. 100% is the strike rate. That, what is the data? Can anyone try and give an inference? Yeah, a conclusion from this data point? Let's quickly look at the readings of the observation. So I'll summarize it because we've lost, I think, 5 minutes over here. So I don't want to waste too much of time. Every even year, 2000, 2002, 2004, 2006, 2008, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. Every even year, the Nifty has closed flat or positive. Every even year. Mind blowing observation. 1 साल नहीं, 2 साल नहीं, last 2000 से, which means for the last how many? 11 readings? Last 11 readings, the Nifty has always closed positive in an even year. Even year. In fact, the data is exactly opposite in an odd year. The data is exactly opposite in an odd year, which means in an odd year, in August, the Nifty corrects by 3 to 5%. I hope you guys can hear me now and you must have understood the observation. Every even year, the Nifty closes positive, at least flat, if not major positive. Look at the last 3, 4, 5 August, 5 even years August. Fantastic data, fantastic data. कहीं पे भी नहीं मिलेगा आपको ये वाला observations. Okay. The last column is drawdown. What is drawdown? That in case, if there is some negativity which happens, what happens or what is the max downside? So as you can see, the maximum downside is 4%. Average आपका 2% index गिरता है. Right now, as I said, we are 1.5% negative. And if you now understand, you will realize why gift nifty is outperforming the US market, है ना? आइडियली क्या होता था, हम हर सिनेरियोज में गिफ्ट निफ्टी ऑलवेज यूज्ड टू एंटिसिपेट, अगर यूएस मार्केट कल गिरने वाले हैं तो आज गिफ्ट निफ्टी नेगेटिव होता था, राइट? या अगर यूएस मार्केट 2% नेगेटिव, 1% नेगेटिव है, तो वी वुड ऑल्सो हैव बीन 1% to 1.5% नेगेटिव. But there is this seasonality factor which is stopping our markets to correct as sharply as in a normal scenario. I hope you are understanding and gelling the point. I'm trying to add all the points which we discussed, whether it's on CBO EVIX, whether it's the Fibonacci observations, and whether this fantastic observation on Nifty 50, August seasonality. Every even year, you can backtest this data. Every even year, we've closed flat. Maximum flat मतलब होता है या तो फिर positive. And 3% is the average return for the index in the month of August. Okay, so assuming that today's data point, now you tell me that there is Iran, Israel and Lebanon, and the war which is going on, there is this scenario, there is that scenario. 2008 में क्या था? No, GFC. 2020 में क्या था? COVID. You throw me scenarios, I will throw scenarios to you. 2014, 12, what was that? Brexit or pigs? Remember Portugal, Ireland, and so on and so forth. Those data points. 2004, we were coming out of a major correction, a 3-year, 4-year bear market. 2002, we were in the midst of a bear market. Okay, and so on and so forth. Those, you can look at the data and you'll be amazed. Every even year in the month of August, the index is closed positive. So this should also tell you a point that it's a buy on dips August. Okay, it's a buy on dips August. Are you understanding? Yes, no? Did you love it so far? और भी है. Did you love it so far? कृपया आपके कमेंट्स फ्लो करने दीजिए. Vijay Asrani says it will differ. I'm okay with it, even if it differs. Okay, as I said, we are not in the business of certainties. We are in the business of probabilities. Something which has worked for the last 24 years, you have to at least give it some more credibility that this is not random and there is a pattern. What could be the reason behind the pattern? That is something which I don't know. I'm not a finder of the reasons, exact reasons, but there is this data which is there, which is happening. Statistically, this has worked out brilliantly well over the last many even years. You can do this data for leap years and all of that also. Okay, do this analysis. तरुण चतुर्वेदी बोल रहे हैं कि अब शांति मिली. Good. Loving it as always. Sushen Raghavendra. Hi Sushen, nice to see you after a long time. Fantastic. Lovely. And getting some relief, says Prince Ashokan. Perfectly gelled everything. Umesh Agarwal says, love you. Thank you so much. Great analysis, says Vinay. Lovely. So, okay, Sasank has tried to summarize it. Don't trade till the market dips to say 2% more, then start pumping in more money for a potential 6% gain. Very much possible. Sasank, very much possible. Okay, that is the reason why I'm saying that why is the gift nifty outperforming? No, there is no other reason. Suddenly outperformance का reason क्या आ गया? जहाँ पे आपको you see a global scenario which is maybe this and that, you see data point which is this and that, but surprisingly August on an even year has always been positive for the index. But this doesn't stop here. The next data is for Bank Nifty. Okay, now can you imagine what is happening to Bank Nifty? तो अगर ये एक इंडेक्स के साथ होता ना तो शायद we would have said कि maybe ठीक है, fine. The next data is on Bank Nifty. 9 out of 10 times Bank Nifty has been positive. Only 1 year, which is August 2012. I have mentioned 8/2012. That is August 2012. खाली एक मंथ था जब बैंक निफ्टी 3.8% नेगेटिव हुआ. But because the data was negative, you know what happened in September 2012? आप खाली चार्ट देखना बैंक निफ्टी का, it rallied by 8%. So आप अगस्त, because the August data was negative, the September में बैंक निफ्टी 2012 में मेजर रैली 8% प्लस रैली आई थी और पूरा का पूरा ऑब्जर्वेशन जो था वो पॉजिटिव हो गया था बैंक निफ्टी. 9 out of 10 times बैंक निफ्टी again 4.5% as a net gain for bank nifty, which means should you be fearful now or should you be saying अरे global में panic है, this is happening, that is happening, that data point, this geopolitical event XYZ. What is the stat telling you? A stat which has run across the last 20 years is telling you that there is a different scenario which is likely to play out for our markets, or the probability is very high. I will not say with certainty. The probability is very high that a different scenario is likely to play out for our markets with a potential 90% over here as a strike rate. As I said, 80%, 90% strike rate. We love it. We love it as a contra bet. And especially at a time when the point is that everyone is panicking right now and trying to exit and sell their portfolios. Lovely. Okay, Arvind Iyer has corroborated my view. Thank you so much for that data. He says every election year is a rally irrespective of who comes. Okay, great. So Keyur, I think since you stay there and you must have done the analysis, you can probably try to look at this stat data, this statistic also. Exactly. So Renu Tandon has summarized this very precisely. This is data and probability, and it removes the emotion part, the subjectivity out of the window. And that's what we are here for, right? We are here to play the game of probability. We are here to play the game of statistics, which works hopefully in our favor. Correct? Lovely. And now if you feel that in the next 2 weeks, if there are defensive sectors like FMCG and IT, you will be disappointed because the seasonality factor also says that FMCG and IT are not the best sectors to hide. They are apparently not the best sectors to hide. The seasonality also says that. So which means mota mota 50%, 5 out of 10 times or 6 out of 11 times is the reading where the FMCG index or the IT sector has given positive returns. When you see 5 out of 6 times, 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 11, it's as good as playing a toss with a coin. So we try to skip those readings. But this tells you that maybe August May, these two sectors may not be the best hiding sectors for you. Okay. May not be the best hiding sectors. But there is one sector which has worked exceptionally well as a defensive as well as a strike rate. And so we end today's webinar with not naming, of course, the sector, but we end the webinar with a point where you subscribe to a Super 5, because in a Super 5, the 5 stocks may say 4 stocks are from those sectors or is from that sector. 4 stocks which you've culled out.